intended for mature audiences.
Good job, Buck. Captain Kidd. Oops. Captain Kidd!
Go to
www.thefacesofmars.com.
That's www.thefacesofmars.com.
Shall we play a game?
Things can turn at any given moment, making a liar out of you or making a liar out of whoever makes the prophecy, or you can become a prophet. It's like, you throw the darts and you get something and, ride with it, man. Ride with it. You can't like I said, we're going to wait and see what happens with this event. You can always chalk it up to synchronicity or coincidence that these things happen, to be forecasting what may happen in the news, what may happen in the future. It's not that I'm a prophet. I just take history and science and surrounding stories, and somewhere in there is a pattern. And when I see the pattern, I report it. If I'm seeing a pattern, then you know that if I'm talking about this, eventually it's going to, somehow ripple for the next few days, weeks, months, whatever. And sometimes, right on the money, you chalk things up to synchronicity. Sometimes you chalk things up to good planning. Sometimes you chalk things up to experience. And this whole situation.
The faces on Mars.
Cover-up controversy down
through time.
And so if you're well aware of patterns, if you're well aware of what's happening, you pretty much figure out the truth.
I'm NASA and you're not?
Pretty much. or come damn close, you see.
NASA has had a long, very close relationship with the Department of Defense. So they have been, I believe, under a lot of national security restrictions. And there is very much evidence, I believe, of backtracking and coyness on behalf of NASA and their involvement with UFOs.
Yeah, UFO diaries.
The NASA individuals here that may know about it, of course, would never make a comment on it.
Well, what a surprise. It's obviously a cover-up.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the point. The closer you get and the more you're involved and the more you see and the more you start being analytical about it, you can pretty much figure out that
it's obviously a cover-up.
Yeah, but things go on all the time, Sub Rosa.
Yeah, they do. Of course they do.
I mean, human nature is human nature. Porn exists because people want it.
Right.
There's a market and a customer.
Right.
Is it illegal? See, it's illegal to send it because then you have to put children in the position of, all that. But exchanging images from websites, downloading on your computer, is that illegal?
Well, there's an iffy, there is an iffy, I guess you could say, law with that about the exchanging.
It's like freedom of the press. You look at stuff.
You're despicable.
First Amendment.
Right.
You look at stuff to put children in the position of, all that. Children in porn. Well, yeah, I have a few sources like that. One in particular we call Deep Throat.
Exactly.
And this morning we got a Lulu, so...
Oh, my God, I feel so good. Oh, yeah. Oh, slow down.
Robin.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Who's your daddy?
Robin.
Who's your daddy? Oh, my God. Oh, yeah, play with my balls. Play with my balls. Oh, that feels so good. Yeah, just roll them around. Oh, my God. I love it when you... Uh-oh, slow down.
Robin. Thank you, Robin. She's very, very good at this. Reminds me of things I forget all the time.
And Dick actually closes his eyes. He puts his hands over his eyes and says, I don't look at that. Robin, I just don't look at that.
Don't move.
Robin.
Deep Throat.
I'll go get you a towel.
And, well, you use it to get somebody's attention.
Right.
I'm NASA and you're not?
You're despicable.
And we're at war at some level.
Right.
There's weird stuff going on.
Using a very powerful tool in order to communicate and to send images and information. And there's all still buzz around the internet that the narrative they're framing is not the right narrative, that maybe something else
Remember what Arthur Clarke said?
What did he say?
Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Our technology could be just a lot smarter than we think it is.
Right.
I mean, our time is very short if we let these clowns
I'm NASA and you're not.
do this in secret much longer.
Right.
But I mean, it's like a message, and in 14 high Hollywood signed letters saying nothing you see here is real. Think X-Files. It can't be more plain than that.
Right. Why don't you talk about all the things we're seeing coming out?
The faces on Mars. Cover-up controversy.
Down
Through time.
You know, there's so much, Clyde, that we're not let in on, that we haven't been allowed in on for decades.
Right.
Like all the NASA stuff.
So when I say NASA, I want to be very clear.
I'm NASA and you're not.
The fascination of the faces on Mars for me, and in my fascination with Richard Hoagland, who's been the big mover and shaker in all of that. We got him from Hoagland, we got him from NASA, and there you are. I mean, one of them's going to say, yeah, those are ours.
Our team's thinking is that face is our face, or what we once were.
You know, a lot of people will think that your
Faces on Mars.
conspiracy theories make you stark raving mad.
Right.
Spot on. Time marches on. For whom the bell tolls. So how fitting for this night of the bizarre. Talk about a hyperdimensional message for multiple parties from the ether. And good evening, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and all you ETs out there in the bite waves of the internet, and wherever you're at, down through time monitoring this show. I'm Gary Legier, the Mars Revealer, known also as the Mad Martian, and I would like to welcome you all to the Martian Revelation that is upon you all again now. And today is September 22nd of 2018, or the 23rd, depending upon your time zone as this airs through time. And you're listening to this broadcast through www.lnmradionetwork.com, where the shield of LNM is the symbol of truth and also your defense for the war which we all fight against the evil dark mission is to bring you the truth one show at a time. LNM Radio Network is also 100% listener supported. So if you're a listener, please help support shows like The Martian Revelation and the many others you would also enjoy listening to through LNM, as it is because of you, the listener, of which makes The Martian Revelation possible to be brought to you all back through time. And listeners to this show can appreciate that comment. So please hit the subscribe button on LNMRadioNetwork.com and please share the link. As well as please donate to the network to allow it to continue being here for you, especially to bring you the Martian Revelation. And you could also subscribe to the Martian Revelation show as well. But you got to remember, you will also be protected by the shield of the LNM Radio Network. Again, where the shield of LNM is the standard and the symbol of the truth and the light. Especially, again, as we fight the war against the evil dark missioners, who are all leading you away from the light and trying to manipulate you all to help you instead open your wallets and pocketbooks to only allow them more power for their dark side to continue to mislead you all and to steer you all away from the truth that they themselves now wish to face or even admit to. So your listenership and your donation support counts as well as your subscriptions, because it helps us all to not only fight but to win against those dark missioners, as well as to secure a future which we all can literally make. The Martian Revelation, our reality. By what? By making our fate. So please donate today to LNM Radio Network, and please subscribe to the Martian Revelation to become part of the Martian Militia.
Go to
thefacesofmars.com.
That's
thefacesofmars.com.
Where you as the Martian Militia will help stomp out the troll, challenge the powers that be, and bring you knowledge and help you lead you all to make our fate and a new future. So we're now recruiting new Revelation Roughnecks and fulfilling the need for a true Martian militia, to which you all will make the Martian Revelation our future reality. We want you to subscribe now and show your support today, because we cannot do it alone. And just remember also that if you're listening to this Martian Revelation show on, again, www.lnmradionetwork.com, then know that you are the resistance. I want to take this opportunity now in time to mention here that after this show with tonight's guest, Dr. John Brandenburg, there will be an extended extreme edition to the show to tune into. Now, I got to warn you all, okay? I know there's many new listeners, etc., and this is a show of a different nature, a show of a different kind, one that should wake you up at night. But if you're offended by the issues and things which will be said, I implore you now to just take away from the show the good and the benefits to you all for this night and call it the night. This is not for the weak of heart nor the weak-minded. And the purpose of this is because I want to address some issues and also will invite some of these issues to call on in and to speak their minds. I mean, it sounds like they have many things that need to be said that they want to say. And I open the door for them for that opportunity. But that also opens the opportunity for what I have to say to them. Because I'd rather, again, talk to the horse, not their other end. So enough said for now, till later at that time. But that being said, now let's check this news out. It comes from a BGR article by Mike Weiner. What is it with these people that have fascination with names with Weiner? We're going to be dealing with some of these Wieners later. But anyway, on September 20th, that stated, there might be something wrong with NASA's Curiosity rover now. NASA's rover situation on Mars is, well, complicated. The aging Opportunity rover was swallowed up by the planet-wide dust storm that covered Mars earlier this summer and hasn't woken back up since. So no sense going reading back into those articles. It's a given it's gone or it went black. But the rover's extended mission is currently in limbo, while NASA waits to see if it still has some life left in it. So all eyes have been on the newer Curiosity rover as it continues, understandably, to explore the Martian surface. Now, in a new update by the Curiosity team, it seems that the last working rover is coming down with a case of, well, something. It seems Curiosity is refusing to send back the vital scientific data that it has been gathering, and NASA isn't sure what's wrong. Oh, but listeners to this show can appreciate, I think we can guess. Look, Curiosity is refusing to send back the vital scientific data that it has been gathering, and NASA isn't sure what's wrong. Well, again, I think we the people know, and listeners to this show can appreciate, I think we know what's wrong. Someone's refusing to allow the data to come back unless the onboard systems has an AI system built in within its robotic self that is deciding for us not to send certain information back. Why? Maybe because of certain information it has collected and it doesn't want us to see or to know? Certainly that applies, and I don't give a rat's ass of what anyone thinks or has to say about it. Conspiracy does fall along the lines of these missions all throughout way back. So looking for life on Mars, stemming from 1976. And our guest tonight, Dr. John Brandenburg, is going to help nail that down for you all as well. It's a fact. It's a reality. But there's reasons why. But that's later. Anyway, to continue, over the past few days, engineers here at JPL have been working to address an issue on Curiosity that is preventing it from sending much of the science and engineering data stored in its memory back to Earth. The Curiosity team explains that the rover remains in its normal mode and is otherwise healthy and responsive. Exactly, otherwise. So that means something must be in there or someone has a connection to it preventing that normal working relationship to function, huh? Again, it's not implausible nor impossible. But the rover isn't totally silent, however, and is still relaying certain status information, just not the science data it has stored locally. Again, you can't make this up. The strange set of circumstances is leaving Curiosity's engineers scratching their heads. I bet it does, especially when you have, DOD and other aspects involved that may have, onboard classifications for their own agenda and missions with the rovers. Besides transmitting data recorded in its memory, the rover can transmit real-time data when it links to a relay orbiter or deep space network antenna, the team writes. But these real-time data are transmitting normally and include various details about the rover's status. Engineers are expanding the details the rover transmits in these real-time data to better diagnose the issue. But Opportunity, that's the one that's currently sleeping off its dust storm hangover, has far surpassed its original mission timeline. Originally intended to last just 90 days of Mars, it has managed to push on well over a decade. So Curiosity is much newer, having landed on the planet in mid-2012, and it's done some fantastic work thus far. Though its primary mission stretched for roughly 2 years, and it has been continuing its work ever since. Whatever is wrong with Curiosity, they say, we'll be keeping our fingers crossed that it gets resolved in a short order. Yeah, don't hold your breath too long. Listeners to this show can appreciate, I think, the vision that we all got going on with what's trying to be told to us here. But in other news, from ARS Technica by Eric Berger, from September 18 states that NASA isn't going to pay for the BFR. Again, the big effing rocket. Not the big Falcon rocket. It's really the big effing rocket. So Elon Musk charts a new course. And on Monday night of September 17th, filled with emotion as much as engineering, one of the most poignant moments came toward the end of the program at SpaceX's rocket factory in California. The company's founder, Elon Musk, choked up as he described the financial contribution from a Japanese businessman, Yusaku Misawa, to his big effing rocket project. I'll tell you, it's done a lot to restore my faith in humanity, Musk said, seated at the end of a Falcon 9 rocket and its 9 engines. That somebody is willing to do this, take their money and help fund this new project that's risky and that it might not succeed. It's dangerous. He's like donating seats. And these are great things. And Elon Musk is right. And the headline news out of Monday's event was that Maezawa has bought all the seats on the first human flight of SpaceX's big effing rocket, an upper stage spaceship, and being paid for a sortie that will bring them all around the moon as early as 2023. Although neither Musk nor Maezawa would specify how much it had cost, Musk said that it is a non-trivial amount that will have a material impact on the big effing rocket program. Now I gotta step in here. NASA refused to fund it. Why? Because NASA wants to be in control with a turtleneck pay speed agenda, which is multinational and not focused on a space program and a space force of we the people of the United States of America. And after tonight's show, you should understand why. No, they would not want to fund Mr. Elon Musk project. It goes against their agenda, which is, not, again, not for we the people and our plans and our desires and our entrepreneurship to get our asses to Mars without them. They chose not to. So that being said, moreover, Maezawa announced that he would also invite artists, painters, musicians, film directors, novelists, and more for this first flight that he is calling Dear Moon. The project has a website. I don't want to have such a fantastic experience by myself, Maezawa said that Monday evening. In fact, I would be a little lonely. Perhaps 8 to 12 people will accompany Maezawa, who said he has invited Musk also to join him. Ain't that guy got balls? For an undisputed amount of money, he kicks in who knows how much money, where again, NASA refused to help Elon Musk and we the people and the Space Force and our agenda to get our asses to Mars long before NASA's turtleneck pay speed, where year after year they just want more missions, more millions of dollars just to continue to search for signs of possible life rather than actually finding it. Again, listeners to this show could appreciate. Am I saying anything that's wrong here? But he has the balls to do this and to pay for other seats as well. Which brings us, how to pay for this all. So what to make out of all this? There was some telling clues Monday about the status of the big effing rocket project and the lengths that Musk is willing to go to see the large rocket and spaceship built. That'll send waves of people to Mars and ultimately make humanity a multiplanetary species. And despite the novelty of seeing Maezawa speak about his love for the moon on Monday, these clues are perhaps the most intriguing elements from the discussion. And Musk introduced the big effing rocket concept in 2016, and he refined it in 2017. He refined it further on Monday night, noting that he had taken the decision to couple the spaceship's landing legs along with actuating wing flaps in part because he liked the aesthetics better. It looked more like the ship from the adventures of Tintin comics, or those ancient spaceships from the 50s in the movies that would come down, land straight up. And then the astronauts would send out a little ladder and they would climb down. Many listeners to this show, I am sure, remember and appreciate that. But I think it looks beautiful, Musk stated. And I love the Tintin rocket design, so I wanted to bias it toward that, he said. And what Elon Musk has never really addressed previously in depth, though, is how specifically he will pay for that big effing rocket. And not just them, we need a whole fleet of them. But he stated we need to seek every possible means of funding. But now he has begun to do this. And the answers aren't entirely convincing for people. Here are the ways he enumerated on Monday for how SpaceX will afford the development for the big effing rocket and the big effing ship, which he said will cost between $2 and $10 billion, and likely around $5 billion. But they will do launching of satellites, servicing the International Space Station with cargo, better than the Russians, and next year, servicing astronauts to the space station, and I'll say beyond, as well as Starlink global broadband system, and private customers or any customers will all help to fund this. And we the people really need to get behind them and support them as well with our donations. The shield of L&M is pushing the Martian revelation ahead, I will add. But we also push this and we also defend Elon Musk and his plans to get our ass to Mars. And Buzz Aldrin, I think, can appreciate those words also. But back to the article, there are problems with each of these bins, however. Launching satellites is a profitable business, yes, but by several estimates we've seen, flying 20 commercial missions a year essentially covers the payroll cost of SpaceX's 7,000 employees. Servicing the space station has resulted in multi-billion-dollar contracts, but a lot of that money was spent on actual development costs. Moreover, SpaceX is now in the uncomfortable position of saying that it will use NASA's money for a program, the Big Effing Rocket Lunar Flyby, to potentially upstage NASA's own deep space program that aspires to complete a lunar flyby mission in the early 2020s as well. So finally, the Starlink service is at least a few years from profitability. Well, make it cheaper to everyone else and that profit margins will escalate right up. But that's just me. You know, what do I know, right? But that left customers as a funding source, you see. And Misawa's announcement is significant in that he is the first one. He is the first customer. And they surmise that if SpaceX could sell 10 lunar flyby missions like this one, they could go a long way toward developing the big effing rocket and helping Elon Musk's vision come to fruition. And that is the challenge before them now. So what would be the novelty approach? What seems most striking about Musk's approach is that he has come to peace with the fact that neither NASA nor the U.S. military at this stage is likely to provide substantial funding. You see, the powers that be agenda needs to shift. And only the National Space Council chairman, Vice President Pence, who stated,
"And here from this bridge to space, our nation will return to the moon and we will put American boots on the face of Mars."
And also to my President Doug Trump, who stated,
"It is going to be something so important. General Dunford, if you would carry that assignment out, I would be very greatly honored also." Where's General Dunford? General? Got it? Let's go get it, General.
Who are actually already ushered in, signing it.
Would anybody like me not to sign this? Is there anybody in this room? They would be in big trouble, I think.
And giving it to General Dunford, the creation of the Space Force, who told General Dunford,
"Got it? Let's go get it, General."
Go get what? One has to wonder why they're not accepting Elon Musk's approach or not incorporate into it, especially to make it their own affairs to pace and one which we the people can literally also be involved on all this process, especially to create enough people to want to have their American boots put on the face of Mars. Remember, they're not bringing flags and flowers and candy. They're bringing them 60s. Because remember, the Space Force was created as another military branch, not a civilian space program branch, which NASA wants to control. That has got to shift, and we have to help Elon Musk. But SpaceX has always been a different company, innovating in the development and marketing of its rockets. And this seems like another advancement along those lines. If the government won't pay for a rocket, perhaps rich international billionaires will. And I appreciate that, and that's encouraged, but it's sad how it has to take international players to do this instead of we the people. It only goes to show that this all has not been being conducted by we the people, which my President Doug Trump now signed and told General Dunford, good luck and go get it, where our boots will need to be signed up of we the people to put our boots on the face of Mars, but yet we're being told we cannot help fund Elon Musk and a vision which is made in America, made in the USA, make America great again. How about make America great permanently? Where's your vision? To the international sellouts of the corporate globalists that don't even want you to have free speech, let alone allowing you to get your ass to Mars, let alone to know and find out what is there? Wake up! That's what I and this show are about. But this billionaire crowdfunding is a novel approach, and it is. And it speaks volumes, in my opinion, both to the determination of Musk and his willingness to take chances. This is not so much a desperate move, but a brave and bold one. We give him credit for exploring all of his options. He came to we the people first. Just saying. And people want to knock him for smoking a doobie. But yet look at what many of you all are doing and encouraging, and obviously a saying is okay. We'll speak about that after the show. A lot of American commies running around, and they ain't gonna control me nor my vision of where I'm gonna help lead the Martian revelation, as well as the Shield of L&M radio network. Remember that, and you shall remember it. But you gotta remember also, this is his dream, and he is going for it for all he is worth. He has balls. Where's yours? And I'm going to tell you, he may actually succeed, and he needs to. We the people need him to. But he also may well fail, especially without we the people's so-called leaders who've been lying to us and derailing from us the truth for all these years are not willing to help him. But it is refreshing to see that someone lay it all on the line like this, isn't it? And I honor him and I respect him. Hey, Mr. Elon Musk, sir, I invite you again as a special honored guest of the Martian Revelation, where we will definitely pack him and smoke him, because we all gonna need him. And especially as we usher in the Martian Revelation, and especially when we send those first big effing rocket ships to Mars and see down what is staring up at us from the surface. Just saying. Again, listeners of the show can appreciate what am I saying wrong, unless you want it all covered up. But there are some concerns. However, they did finish Monday evening's event with some concerns about the overall viability of the Big Effing Rocket project. Although the Big Effing Rocket and the Big Effing Ship would be the largest, most complex, and certainly most ambitious rocket and spacecraft humans have ever built with balls, the company at present is only devoting about 5% of its resources to their development, Musk said. And the company's primary work remains commercial contracts for NASA, launching satellites and national security missions. Great. Again, they're blending in the turtleneck pace speed. Like Dr. Brandenburg said the last time he was on this show a couple months back, he stated that basically, after he laughed, that Musk is basically working for the U.S. government now. Well, it sounds like Musk is also open to entrepreneurship, and we need to support him if they don't. They need to be made to feel embarrassed, like Dr. Gillivan states, and I support that statement, as well as many of you listeners to this show could appreciate that statement of theirs. But moreover, while SpaceX continues to produce first-rate renderings, there remains relatively little hardware in evidence Monday. Musk showed a photo of the main cylinder section of the Big Effing Ship's prototype, which is 9 meters in diameter. He said work on the pressure domes and engine section would begin soon. The spaceship seems even less far along. Asked about the interior of the Big Effing Ship, which could house up to 100 people for a journey to Mars and have more pressurized volume than the International Space Station, 1,000 cubic meters, he estimated, Musk replied that we just have some concepts. The company hopes to leverage its work developing life support systems for the Dragon spacecraft for life support inside the Big Effing Ship. And Musk shared a timeline Monday evening that hot tests of the Big Effing Ship at the company's spaceport in South Texas should begin in late 2019. Then the company could move on to high-altitude, high-velocity flights of the Big Effing Ship in 2020, as well as initial rocket tests that year. If things go well, Musk states, we could be doing the first orbital flights in 2 to 3 years. However, he acknowledged that his timeline, as well as the 2023 target date for the first flight of the Big Effing Rocket, was aspirational. You have to set a kind of date that is the things to go right date, Musk said. Things often don't go right in reality, and this is a ridiculously big effing rocket. It's got so much advanced technology, it's not 100% certain that we succeed in getting this to flight. I think it's pretty likely, but it's not certain. Meaning what? He put his balls in the vice for us all in our future for the Martian Revelation. Help him out! This all remains an audacious process. On Monday night, SpaceX took a critical step toward developing the Big Effing Rocket by signing its first commercial customer. It will need many more for the Big Effing Rocket to become a reality, but oftentimes the first step is the hardest one. And believe me, I know, as we are phased back through time, bringing you the Martian Revelation each Saturday night, 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. or longer Eastern Time. And you can only get that through LNMRadioNetwork.com, where we cover everything. Not cover up everything. We cover everything. There's a difference. All right. Now I want to continue on to focus on something else, of which will lead into our guest, Dr. John Brandenburg, before we go to break. and it's dealing with UFO diaries and the Faces of Mars images seen therein. And early on in my investigation, in later 2007, in October 8th actually, I was able to have a preliminary report on those new faces from the 1993 video of UFO diaries called Cydonia, Discover the Earth-Mars Connection. Long story there behind that. You can always find that out from Late Night in the Midlands archives. Pack 'em and smoke 'em for sure. You need 'em. So anyway, in order to have this preliminary report on these faces done, I had to contact somebody that is in some knowledge, okay, and who wanted to remain nameless at that time. Now, mind you, not too many people seen it, though they overlooked it, but I made it into a video form. I have that video on www.thefacesofmars.com. Just scroll down on the page under the guest information and see the video. As well as I had the video and also imagery, scenes that I had compiled together from the UFO diaries and the video itself of UFO diaries on that page as well. You could always watch and listen to after the show, because it shows other images of different faces of Mars that the public has never seen before, that has never been given out in any NASA public archive before. And at the time, it was Richard C. Hoagland who encouraged me to investigate into them. So I was doing my job. This is part of my investigation. But even though the name was withheld, it doesn't matter, because of the quality of and the information of this preliminary report into those faces from UFO diaries was very balanced. It was not biased toward one side or the other. And it details something very pertinent to which weighed in favor of these images being real. And that's it. People just wanted to close it down. These images are fake. They're faked. Many people were angry because of the fact of who it led back to that encouraged the investigation that was supposed to answer about them, and that never did. But need I digress? As I said, I'm going to read this preliminary report because it's important and crucial to tonight's guest and the content of the show we are going to be discussing with him, as well as also a couple other areas. Because it is, in fact, it was Dr. John Brandenburg who conducted this preliminary report. And now, in essence, that should change the whole scenario of people, how they acted toward me, what they were saying about me, what they were citing on the fence of jumping off on the side of the fence of non-disclosure, instead of having the balls to investigate no matter where it leads or no matter who it leads to. Again, that all being said, from Monday, October 8th of 2007, to a preliminary report on the new Faces of Mars imagery, old yet new image data being seen in a video from a video cassette tape released in 1993 called UFO Diaries, Cydonia, Discover the Earth-Mars Connection. So let's read this. Introduction, possible images of new Mars faces surfacing in 1993. Now, mind you all, when this surfaced in 1993, that doesn't mean it was seen in 1993. It was never aired in the United States, but it was aired in Germany, and as well as hinted at being broadcast as well in Russia. There's a Russia connection to this, and I'm not getting into that now, because that's more information that also, well, came across my way with someone calling me one day on the phone unexpectedly. But I'll just say this. I had been mailed, literally snail mailed, with no return address, wrapped in a brown paper bag, like, you know, that you would get from a grocery store with a CD burnable disc in it, saying on top of it, I hope you see it, ... I hope you see it. It was postmarked in the town that I lived to also. Isn't that ironic? But that being said, it was in 2003 that I had that happen. I did not reveal it until 2006, June 1st of 2006, at Enterprise Mission Forum. Again, I wasn't just like some, you know, weasel that crept out from under a rock and spraying this upon Hoagland's attention and Enterprise. You know, we were the anomaly hunters. We were part of Enterprise. I was under his wing. I was like a son to him. Being said more than once at this point. The Martian Revelation show was still airing at that time, though having its problems, but obviously learned and figured out and guided to see that of who was trying to manipulate and steer that to the ground, rather us all to Mars, long before now. So you people have to appreciate that this preliminary report was done and conducted by Dr. John Brandenburg back then. And even we could understand some of the fact of how and why he wanted to remain nameless. But that has changed. And tonight's discussion is going to be very informative for you all and pretty much in your face about the reality of it. And the respect also Dr. John Brandenburg deserves for being who he is, his history as well as the future, and where he is also helping partake us for that Martian revelation as we the people. So in a video produced circa 1993, images appear in the background that appear to show new Mars face-like objects, similar to that found near Cydonia Mensa on Mars in 1976 in image frames 35A72 and later found in frame 70A13 that was found by Vince DiPietro and Gregory Molinar. When they went to Goddard looking for these copies themselves and finding the famous second view that never showed the face disappeared, according to NASA's life from 1976. In fact, it confirmed it all and more, and even had a different sun angle. We could see the other side of the face as well. Now, in the original discovery images in Cydonia Mensa, a large pyramid was also found near the face of Cydonia. It was subsequently discovered by John Brandenburg that two possible new faces, one bearing a close resemblance to the original Cydonia face, existed on frame 86A10 in the Utopia region as well. Yes, a hint of another face found by Dr. John Brandenburg, with numerous other features suggesting archaeological ruins in the same immediate areas. Now, the Utopia objects have been now confirmed in recent Mars Odyssey imagery, and I will say now to add to that, as well as Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter context imagery. But anyway, the Viking image discoveries were all documented in numerous scientific abstracts and in the booklet called Unusual Mars Surface Features, the 4th edition. The discovery of possible archaeological monuments and ruins at two widely separated sites on Mars, yet both sharing similar characteristics of location near the 0-kilometer elevation line, near ancient flowing water, provokes the hypothesis of the presence of an extinct civilization on Mars, dating from the end of a long period of Earth-like climate. The fact that large carved human-like faces and helmets, similar in the form to the Olmec heads found in Central America, would be found at both sites, with the Utopia faces being somewhat smaller, suggests the relics of the hypothetical extinct civilization would be found widely on the planet, and that the helmeted head, similar to the Olmec heads on Earth, was an important icon of the civilization and would also be found perhaps on smaller scales in regions of the planet that supported the civilization. That makes sense. We see that evidence today from our ancient past we dig up of megalithic structures and pyramids along the world that do seem to have a connection. I think it's a given now. But the Viking mission of both A and B orbiters were extended at the end of their planned mission to support the Viking landers, and near the end of the extended mission, the orbits of both spacecraft were lowered and took many images at 10 meter per pixel resolution. This was 5 times better than that of the images in the early mission, such as 35A72, where the famous face of Mars was touted to the world public and then denied. But these images were not brought to film for many years, remaining unseen, and a possibility does exist that if a hypothesized dead Martian civilization exists, then images of new artifacts, including new, smaller faces, could have been found in these extended mission images, which were never released to the public, quote unquote. Therefore, the following investigation is based on the 2 simplest possibilities for images of new faces in the 1993 videotape have been made. The 2 simplest possibilities are 1, they are simply paste-up fakes made as background for the show. Okay, many have stated that, again, without a scientific investigation into them first. Or 2, they are, in fact, extended mission Viking frames showing new, smaller versions of faces like those in Cydonia and Utopia that were leaked by intelligence sources to the show's producers. Think about that. A third possibility exists that they are truly sophisticated fakes, but this would require resources and motivations that would seem an unlikely match to the circumstances, since the images were used merely as backdrops for a video. It is also true that with additional faces already found in Utopia in 1984, images of still additional faces located on Mars are less important, and therefore motivation to fake them in sophisticated ways is absent. That's also important. The fact also remains that if the images are truly sophisticated fakes, then it would be nearly impossible to detect this, given that the images available are video outtakes of backdrop images. Therefore, in this preliminary investigation, we will simply assume that the images are either possibilities 1 or 2, crude fakes or authentic Viking images. Old yet new image data. Sound familiar to some of you people? Why do I hear a blade coming out of his scabbard? But anyway, examination of the images. Images 1, 2, and 3 show face-like objects similar to that in Cydonia, but not identical. Before examining the faces in detail, it's worthwhile to note other features of the images. 2 features of the context of the faces in the images are immediately apparent. The landscapes have very little cratering, and the dark circle appears in 2 images that is small compared to the faces. We could compare that, let's say, with other Viking images. That circle is a watermark. In fact, I processed all of the publicly released Viking image data from the raw formats. I have found imagery with multiple watermarks on them in orbit, which tells us that, yes, how did water get in there if not from Earth? This proves what Dr. John Brandenburg was stating, that in its extended missions, the Vikings were being lowered closer and into the atmosphere, where water could have gotten in, and apparently many did. For the one at 35A72, we see a watermark, a single one. So it depends at what point in time and how much water was getting into the lens that was leaving these water stains. That should make sense to many of you. So the report continues, the lack of cratering restricts the location of the images to small regions near the 0-kilometer elevation line in the northern hemisphere of Mars. Such regions are Cydonia, Niloceridis, Deuteronilus, that formed in the early Amazonian epoch of Mars, and date from the last years of Earth-like conditions on Mars. Much imagery in the extended mission was taken in these areas. Did you hear that? Much imagery in the extended mission was taken in these areas. Again, that he already alluded to, that was never released to the public. And this also means that much of this landscape has been imaged in earlier lower resolution images. So it should be possible to identify the location in terms of longitude and latitude of the landscapes seen in the images. Again, if we were able to acquire them. But the water spot that forms a dark circle in the images is seen in the earlier A spacecraft images that are oddly numbered. Both spacecraft carry 2 cameras, and only one of the cameras on the A spacecraft had a circular lens spot. I guess, is that the only camera that, in essence, had the leak inside of it? Figure 2. It shows the new face with the lens spot ring from the same frame inset to show relative scale. And if those that can see that image, you will in the video, as I am going along accordingly with the video shows. You have to press pause a lot in order to read them and go forward. But in that image, you will see another new face of Mars that the public's never seen before. It looks similar to the one in Cydonia. In fact, they also put the one up in Cydonia that was imaged right above it, so you cannot mistake the differences seen of these faces. That is not the same image, it is not the same feature, and it is certainly not the same area. Figure 3 shows a new face, no lens spot in the picture. Maybe that alludes to coming from Viking Orbiter B. These new faces look different in detail from the original face in Cydonia seen in Figure 1, 35A72. However, in the original form of 35A72, where the lens spot appears, it is the approximate same size as the face. The spot looks very similar to that seen in other Viking images. The pixels in 35A72 were approximately 55 meters across. Since the circle is fixed on the lens, it has a diameter of the same number of pixels in diameter in all images, approximately 150 pixels diameter. If the original Cydonia face was imaged at 5 times the original resolution of 10 meters per pixel, the pixel size for the late extended missions of the Viking spacecraft, then the circle would shrink relative to the image size of the Cydonia face and be approximately the size of the crater to the bottom left of the Cydonia face in Figure 1. The fact that appears is roughly 1/3 the size of the new face-like objects, 1 and 3, seen in Figure 2 and 4, means that these objects are approximately 1/3 the size of the original Cydonia face. Unfortunately, the circle does not appear in the image of face-like object 2, so we can only guess its size is also small. So this brings us now to preliminary conclusions. At this stage, no evidence that the new face-like objects are simply cut-and-paste versions of the original Cydonia face images on 35A72 and 7813 exist. No evidence appears of that. You have to catch that. That's important here. But the faces are all different in detail from those images. The object's appearance appears consistent, at least for objects 1 and 3, with the objects being imaged in the late extended Viking mission. Given the presence of the face-like objects in Utopia of smaller size than the face of Cydonia, the possibility exists that a hypothetical Martian civilization, now extinct, I'll add question mark, would have created multiple copies on smaller scale of the original face. Again, that makes sense. It is therefore possible that these objects are then additional faces. It is possible also that these images have never been released to the public because of their provocative character. Therefore, a preliminary conclusion is that the images are indeed authentic and are from the late extended mission and reveal smaller, approximately 1/3 the scale, assuming 10-meter pixels, versions of the faces seen in Cydonia and Utopia that are publicly given. These images may have been supplied as deep background material to the makers of the video and may have never been released to the public. Again, I want to reiterate, these images may have been supplied as deep background, quote-unquote, material to the makers of the video and may have never been released to the public. I will add to that, yes, to the makers of the video, which was done in a Masonic lodge, and someone provided it to them. The question is, who? We all know that answer by now. Listeners to this show can appreciate.
The fascination of the faces on Mars for me, and my fascination with Richard Hoagland, who's been the big mover and shaker in all of that. We got him from Hoagland, we got him from NASA, and there you are. I mean, one of them's going to say, yeah, those are ours.
Which are our pictures.
But to continue, the landscape in the images, again, resembles that found near the northern 0-kilometer elevation line due to its absence of craters. The objects are probably then from the Cydonia Mensa region also, and may perhaps be found in lower resolution images of the same area from the Viking or later missions. Dr. Source, name withheld for then, 2007, until now. Dr. John Brandenburg. On that note, pack 'em and smoke 'em. You're gonna need 'em. This show is gonna rock your worlds.
I'll be back.
Don't run. We are your friends.
Hello.
to the moon, which discovered water at the moon's poles, which I will add was also controlled by the Department of Defense. But previously he worked on space plasma technologies, nuclear fusion, and advanced space propulsion. He is the principal inventor of the MET, microwave electrothermal plasma thruster, using water propellant for space propulsion. During the Reagan years, he worked at Mission Research Corporation at Sandia National Laboratories on Space Defense Initiative and plasmas for controlled fusion and directed energy weapons. Yes, sounds like Star Wars, correct? And he earned his PhD in plasma physics at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory while working on controlled fusion and a bachelor's degree in physics at Southern Oregon University. Dr. Brandenburg believes a faction of the government wants controversial images of lost civilizations and nuclear weapon signatures on Mars to be released to the public. For why? In order to build support for a manned mission to the Red Planet. Well, that's not we the people's fault, but with the face of Mars and various artifacts and pyramids in the Cydonia region, there are telltale signs of a past civilization, perhaps akin to the ancient Egyptians or Mayans, as he has concluded. Yet Mars's atmosphere is loaded with telltale isotopes that suggest a massive nuclear explosion took place there around 500
the Mars Revealer.
Yes. But based on the amount of the chemical element xenon-129 found in the Martian atmosphere, Brandenburg estimates that the explosion was large enough to have torn the entire atmosphere of Mars away from the planet and out into space, changing it from an Earth-like environment to its current state. He proposed that the elevated ratio of xenon-129 and xenon-132 in the atmosphere of Mars could only be explained as the after-signature of a nuclear weapon. He suggests that massive explosions occurred in Mare Acidalium at approximately 50 degrees north by 30 degrees west, near Cydonia Mensa, and in the Utopia approximately 50 degrees north and 120 degrees west, near Galaxius Chaos, claiming they are both locations of possible archaeological artifacts. The nuclear attack was likely done from space, and with the mid-air explosion that left a huge amount of trinitite-like glass in two locations, one near Cydonia and, again, the other Utopia Planum. And he believes we need to get astronauts on Mars as soon as possible in order to find out further details of what happened there, and so that Earth can avoid the same fate. And that being said, I believe we have our friend Dr. John Brandenburg on with us. How you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, it's great, Gary. It's great to be on your show. It's a great honor and pleasure.
Oh, the honor's
The
mine
days
and
of the
ours.
Martian Revelation are upon us.
Indeed, the future. Time marches on. Isn't that true, Dr. J?
Time marches on. I remember you telling me that back in the early 2000s in Florida. You know, when I was working at the Kennedy Space Center and talking to you, and it's true now. The days of the Martian Revelation are upon us.
Yes, and you're speaking
coming
about.
out.
Indeed, and yes, you're speaking about when I was on the air there at WMEL right there on the Space Coast, where my flag was planted. But and yes, and that's where we met. And we also did a show live at the studio there. Remember that? That's when we met.
Yeah. No, we had a great time.
Yeah, it was good, and definitely the show now again, Dr. J. Wow, you're right though. It is more relevant now than any other point in time in history, even beyond what I was trying to help create the vision for where now it could be more applicated.
Right.
Does that make sense? I mean, that's amazing. And your work has definitely been continuing too.
The human race is basically woken up to the fact that we're not alone in the universe. We know so much now much more about the universe than we did even back in the early 2000s. I mean, we have thousands of charted planets that are Earth-like, that are outside the solar system. I mean, in fact, the very closest star you can look at, which is Proxima Centauri, is called Proxima because it means it's close. And
proximity.
And it's got a planet the size of the Earth orbiting in the Goldilocks zone. I mean, that tells you something. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out what that means.
Is its sun is as strong as ours or greater? Because if it was greater, it would have to be in a different zone for its Goldilocks.
It's a very weak little red star.
I see.
You know, it's strictly 99. It's strictly dollar store variety star. I mean, this is, but the Goldilocks zone is a lot closer than it is to our star.
Right.
The sun. But
right. Distance and the golden.
Still the Goldilocks zone.
Mm-hmm. And that varies from sun to sun. Apparently, where Earth-like planets or life, as we know it, may have the potential, especially where there's water, 9 times out of 10, or depending where Earth's going now, is you have life. And therefore, if the sun is weaker, I don't know, it would be closer. If it was stronger, it would be farther out.
For every star like the sun, with the big golden star, there's 100 of these little, what they call red dwarfs, and they last a long time. And so if you can have life around them, the universe is really
universal.
The universe, life in the universe is universal. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Levin.
The place calls.
Yes, exactly, and that matches exactly what Dr. Gil Levin also attributes and attests to. We've had him on this show, and a very, very great guy. He's the first Mars revealer, and he's got to be vindicated and validated.
He discovered life on Mars.
Right, and then they blackballed him, and we have a petition.
Well, it was, they didn't want to find life on Mars. Just then, they wanted to wait. They'll find it when they decide it's in their best interest to find life on Mars.
Right.
It's all calculation.
It's in our best interest now that we the people need to have a say in that, and it's a shame because Dr. J, we created a petition. Granted. I'm not embarrassed by the outcome of it, okay? Because why? It seems I'm the only one that had the balls to do it after all these years. But number 2, we're going to start it up again. This is not a joke. I had Seth Shostak on the air as well. And, interesting individual, and we know the positions of where he goes and lay. But one thing that offended me in a way, and, I felt, we all, the listeners of this show, felt his passion for this. Let me tell you something, Gary. Science isn't done by petitions. It isn't done by ordering the president to order NASA to put such and such experiment on a rover. I'm like, it's a shame it has to come to petitions.
Uh-huh.
Now, think about that, because there is a demand. Now, look, Dr. Gil Levin is 94 years old, Dr. J. 94.
Oh, isn't that great?
I know, and he's still sharp as a whip. And,
sharp as a razor.
Yes, and I'm not trying to cause problems for him or anyone, but I have my own agenda for the public as well, like sir. And that we, the people, are ready for this. We want it. We demand it. And if we got to make petition after petition after petition, sir, I got to ask you, though, before we continue on this very interesting night of conversation, would you support such a petition and or Dr. Gil Levin's experiment advanced proposed submission that always gets denied? The last time sent home to him, Dr. Gil, in the camp, Dr. J. They sent it home in a camp. They didn't even want it registering through the mail. So we want the experiment to be put on the next Mars rover 2020, as well as open the door. I'm going to make the communication soon when we start the petition again to contact ESA and Russia. Dr. Gil stated that Russia wanted his experiments back in Mars 96. Remember that? And the Pentagon told him no. That now the door's open. We, the people, want this experiment put on the Mars rover 2020.
You remember what happened?
We don't look for just signs of life no more. We want the actual discovery of it and or rebuttal, the validation or the rebuttal to match or digress from what the Vikings, both of them, both proven consistently 4,000 miles apart from each other. We want to see it, the same findings here. And this time, at least Seth Shostak did give us a good idea, everyone. We could have a microscope watching it.
Right. Let's just put a microscope on there.
Would you support such an endeavor and or maybe have advice for us at least? We don't mean to put you in the winch here, but it's just as important as discussing, again, the preliminary report for the Faces of Mars I want us to get into. But do you see the value in that, sir? Do you think that's an effort, well, knowing me, that I should undertake on behalf of we the people? Your advice is critically taken more so than what Seth Shostak said about science isn't done by petitions.
He said science isn't done by petitions?
Yeah, he was like kind of mad at that, and then debasing Dr. Gill as more qualified, even stating that there was better technology now, which there isn't. They have none. They have no technology at all that detects actual life.
The stuff that Gill did, that, you take some soil and you mix in some chicken soup, and if there's bacteria there, it'll be fruitful and multiply. That's as simple as possible.
And it'll fart out what? The methane, or whatever the detection is. All the isotope that is nuclear related.
Especially methane and carbon dioxide. Well,
right.
Carbon dioxide is already there.
And then we could test if it's life, and then we'll kill it. To prove again, like on Viking, even though we waited, a couple months, and it won't do anything. Therefore, it cannot be a chemical response. And this time we'll have the microscopes to prove it, even before, So isn't that a valuable aspect that we undertake for Mars 2020? We're not, look, here it is, Dr. J, right from the outset. We, the people here, are not willing and are sick of the turtleneck pace speed when the space race is on, and we have to protect the homeland like Pence and my President Doug Trump stated, which he told General Dunford, good luck, General, now go get it. Dr. J, go get what?
I know. Well, they're forming.
So this is why I thought of you, sir. I thought of you because you have the best humor. You have the best ways to put this all out together, like you explained it to me. That's why I was hoping, with this preliminary report, that you, sir, are to be honored and thanked. And Dr. J, did I ever betray your trust in that, despite what I went through? I want the listeners to hear it.
Oh no, Gary, you've always dealt solid with me.
Thank you, and that's what
I've always tried to urge you to handle things in a keep an even keel on things. I know you've been upset, but you. And I
appreciate that.
I want you to keep an even keel on things and keep a sense of humor about it, because
you got to.
This is kind of crazy. It's a crazy business, but based on my conversations with people I've used to work with in Washington D.C. The government is basically moving toward disclosure, at least of a dead civilization on Mars and life on Mars, because that's not that threatening to people. I mean, you got spaceships flying around the Earth with aliens in them. That's pretty scary, but. A dead civilization on Mars, some microbes on Mars, that's not that scary. Rational human beings will be able to digest that really well, and they will, they'll grasp what it means too. It means that we're not alone in the universe. The universe is full of life. If you go to the next planet out and find light, not only primitive life left over from a previous epoch, but also a dead civilization, then that tells you something right there. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out what that means.
I've said that many times.
The universe is full of people like us and civilizations like us.
And like you told me
that means our future is going to look like Star Trek.
Yes, and like you told me on the show many years ago when we were discussing Morningstar Pass, regards these beings, I think you were joking with who, Vince DiPietro, where you said there's good news, or the character in the book, I forget the name, sir.
They say they get.
The good news is that they like us. The bad news is they like us.
That's right. That's one of the characters in the book says that.
And dealing with a secret space program who dealt with those issues. Isn't that right, sir?
Well, and, I worked in Washington, D.C., and I heard all the rumors, and that was all, I put it in Morningstar Pass as a science fiction book, but it was based on, a lot of conversations I overheard around the coffee machine, and
now we're more mature to understand it and follow it and adapt and realize the reality, especially since Mike Pence, who's the chairman of the National Space Council now, who stated we're going to put American boots on the face of Mars.
Boots on the face on Mars. That's right. We like it.
And everyone's clapping. They don't get it. They think it's astronauts or flowers. No, they're bringing M60s.
Well, I will tell you that after talking with my old buddies from D.C., and, you have on your website the last crucial pieces of data I've gotten recently.
On www.thefaceofmars.com.
The Allende meteorite xenon, which is, nuclear weapons or supernova xenon, called R process. And then, the enhanced pictures from Cydonia, the new ones showing the nostrils and the nose and the ornaments on the helmet. And then finally the brickwork on the pyramid. It looks just like the pyramid at Maidum in Egypt, which was a collapsed pyramid. They built a pyramid about halfway, and then it collapsed while they were building it. And
supposedly. I wasn't there, so who knows?
It looks like they tried to build it too steep. They wanted to build it really steep, and it was
pyramid.
And the brickwork wasn't strong enough to handle that much weight.
Right.
Because the steeper you make it, the more it's got to be resistant to the gravity stress. And it apparently fell apart while they were trying to build it, and so they quit working on it. But it's nice because it shows what collapsed brickwork on a pyramid looks like, and it looks just like the collapsed brickwork on the D&M pyramid. And the U.S. government, once I pointed out, went back and took 2 new pictures to validate that.
Yes, indeed.
They're investigating. We would find stuff and then they would investigate it. They would suddenly pictures would appear of stuff that we had talked about, and that's an example of that. So the government wants the dead civilization on Mars to come out, and also I announced discovery of that civilization officially at Alien Con and also the MUFON Symposium, and I announced it in the name of the U.S. government.
You hear that, people?
The U.S.
He was told to do it.
Well, let's just say I told them that's what I wanted to do.
You were the man for it.
I told them that's what I wanted to do because American taxpayers paid for all the data that allowed us to discover this, and they said, "Great." They said this is a really good thing you're doing.
I commend you.
They didn't want the Russians or the Chinese later claiming that they discovered it.
Yes, and Dr. J, I'm going to tell you. Yes, and I'm going to tell you that takes balls. We commend you, sir, and we thank you.
Well, thank you. But hey, I'm a scientist who, when the time comes, all scientists are supposed to be careful and occasionally cautious. But when the time is right, you're supposed to just be bold and decisive.
Right.
And that was the time that came, and so I decided it was time to just announce that we had discovered this, and it's an American discovery. The almost 99% of the data was gathered by American spacecraft, paid for by the U.S. taxpayers.
Right.
So we don't
and
really
now the
own
U.S.
it.
taxpayers have to make
We don't own it,
petitions
but we
to put
are
missions on the rover.
discoverers. What?
Right. And now we, the people, have to make petitions to put experiments on the rovers for someone who deserved to have that validation and vindication, which we, the people, all want also, Dr. J. Look, I appreciate your stance, but they're screwing us, and they're milking us. And I'm not going to, look,
Well,
2050? 2050?
Jet Propulsion Lab is superbly talented, but they know where their bread is buttered. They've one of them even told me, he was retired, but he said that the saying at Jet Propulsion Lab was that, if we find anything like life on Mars, the astronauts will come with their big rockets and take Mars away from us.
That's untrue,
so
though. You need both.
Life on Mars is death for JPL because Mars is their big money maker.
Why would it be death for JPL? They're good at what they do in robotics.
Well, I'm exaggerating a little bit. Of course, you'd like to send a lot of rovers as a, prep the landing site.
Not those rovers.
And build bases on Mars for the humans to get ready. To get ready for human habitation, and do that robotically, using stuff that JPL has developed.
Yeah,
I
they
think
can
they
Mars
certainly have a role in it, but they don't want to be second fiddle on Mars either.
Again, I was right.
Johnson is going to be first fiddle on Mars.
Well, I know on the last show when you were on, sir, we spoke about Elon Musk. What are your feelings about NASA giving him the boot of not funding the big effing rocket?
Well,
and I heard you've been working on some rockets too, by the way.
Its big bleeping rocket itself. It's the Space Launch System.
Oh, what? Carrying the Orion? Give me a break. Come on. We don't
This country needs a big rocket. By the way, it's actually very common. They just took the space shuttle parts,
right?
Just like a bunch of Legos, and pieced them together, and so the Space Launch System, which is equivalent to the Saturn V moon rocket, is fairly cheap. Of course, everyone complained. Oh, well, I've been at meetings, and these guys get up there and say, "Oh, my paper rocket, that's just on paper, is much better than the Space Launch System and costs a lot less." And
but is it going to be able to lift
a lot of these people are just crybabies. They want the money, and instead Boeing and Lockheed are getting the money, and they're just taking the parts of the. Let me tell you something. we in the space business figured that if we're going to build a Mars rocket, it's going to be a big boondoggle. It is. It's a lot of money.
Will it carry 150,000 tons?
Gary, I want you to know something. Okay, so given that it's going to be a boondoggle, no matter what happens,
right?
The people at the place I worked at, which was Orbital Technologies before it was taken over by Sierra Nevada. And so we're all sitting around, over lunch talking about the Space Launch System being built out of parts of the shuttle.
Right.
And you know what we said to ourselves? We said, gee, the government's actually looking pretty serious because normally a project like this, the government just spends money on it and doesn't get anything in the end because they want to reinvent everything But instead, this one, they just taken, it's like a box of Tinker Toys from the Space Shuttle program. They just took that box of Tinker Toys and built a rocket out of it, and they're using the shuttle main engines.
What's its payload,
the big central fuel tank of the shuttle is the big fuel tank and they're using the solid boosters on the side for the Space Launch System. So it's basically just the shuttle launch system without the shuttle.
But will it carry 150,000 tons on launch to space?
It'll end up being able to do that. 150 tons.
Really? No, 150,000 tons. Ain't that what Musk said? With 100 men. With 100 men, or was it 100 tons? I could have sworn it was 100,000.
He wanted to build like a Saturn V type booster. Saturn V put maybe 150 tons into orbit, and that's enough to start a Mars mission. One or two of those launches.
What do you think of Werner von Braun's old design?
What? Oh, von Braun? Well,
yeah, because you work with gravitation. You work with gravitation or anti-gravity, and Werner von Braun put a very good concept in the 50s by a Disney movie. I'm sure you're familiar with it. What do you think about
Yeah, I saw all that stuff.
Do you think that's feasible that we should do?
Von Braun built the Saturn V.
Right, but his vision was
the most successful rocket.
Right.
It was the most successful rocket ever built by the United States. It never failed. It never once blew up. It always did its job. And what they're doing, the Space Launch System, is basically just a reinvention of the Saturn V. So von Braun would actually be pleased with it. In fact, by the way, I'll tell you, Boeing,
but on the ships, remember,
Boeing and Lockheed wanted to change a lot of stuff on the Space Launch System from just being shuttle parts, and Congress told them no, you got to use the parts from the shuttle. And when we saw that, we thought, wow, they're actually pretty serious about this. They're actually trying to get something done, not spend a lot of money.
Right, but von Braun also had the anti-gravity around this, like 2001, with the nuclear.
We'll get that working. We'll get that working eventually.
And he said to carry 50 men, 50 to 100 in each one also. And artificial gravity, that's important.
Oh, yes, definitely. One of my hopes, one of my goals as a career, in my career is to invent artificial gravity so you can turn on gravity in a room in a space station, just like turn on a light switch.
Yes.
I believe it's possible.
Or maybe, or touch a bar in the center of a craft when the red light goes on and wait for it to go green, and for a split second you feel lightweight, but you have to keep holding it. Split second so you adjust to its gravity. And I told you that once from an experience I had, Dr. J. Well, I told you then it was a dream, but it was an experience that I actually had to do. Now, you said that sounded like some form of anti-gravity or gravitational acclimation device or something?
Yeah.
Is that the type of thing you would? That's your dream.
We're going. I just got back from Berlin, Germany.
Right.
From a physics conference, and I'll tell you, the physics conference was some of the smartest people in Europe. It was mostly Europeans.
And that's why he's there, everybody.
And they were from Germany and France and Romania, Norway, all these different places. And we talked about some deep and heavy stuff, like quantum mechanics and stuff. And
things
the reason
way
I was
beyond
there
me
is I got invited to present my GEM unification theory, which unifies gravity and electromagnetism.
All right.
And it's a pretty good theory.
But there's no working model, is what you're saying.
The theory predicts that you can control gravity with electromagnetism directly. That you'll be able to have artificial gravity on space stations just by flipping a switch, like on a light switch.
So there's no working model.
You'll be able to fly without any rocket propellant, or you'll just need power. You have to get the power from nuclear power.
Well, that's where von Braun comes in. All right. But the device you're talking about, then you said as a theory, and obviously on the record, there's no working model.
Well, not that I'm aware of.
Oh, whenever you say well, man, it gets me thinking.
You know, let's just say I'm not aware of any working model, but the theory.
What do you think? How far do you think we are from it?
The theory says it's possible.
All right, how far do you?
It doesn't tell me exactly how to do it, but it gives me some hints and stuff, and so we're going to try and get that working.
You think maybe 20 years, 100 years, 50 years? We'll have a working model?
Oh, we'll have it before then.
Wow. Well, that's clarifying.
Well, Gary, we probably already got it out of Site 51.
Well understood. Again, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. You know, we commend you.
We were, you know, at one point, we had people from the government talking to one company that I worked at, and apparently they came there because I was working there, because I worked on the gem theory. So they come there, and they basically said, you know, what we want to do is we want to take this technology that we have developed in secret and mainstream it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the computer chips, they actually had those working in classified projects a couple years before they released them to the public. And the same with, you know, like, well, anyway, let's just
like faces of Morse images in the video.
They said, sort of, here's what they said. They said, we're going to have you walk in the desert by the fence for Site 51, you know, on the outside of the fence. And then we're going to toss a report over the fence to you.
Gotcha.
Basically. And you guys are going to go patent it and make money off it.
Gotcha.
And just don't tell anybody where you got it.
Right. You discovered the discovery of the century.
Yeah,
run with it.
Somebody asked, I guess I'm a smart guy.
Right. But one day we want what we want. We'll come a knocking.
Oh yeah. Well, they well, we're gonna try and build Jetson's flying car. You know.
Colonel Corso explained that scenario.
There's a really funny story. Well, now that the Cold War is over, it's kind of funny. Sakharov, you know, he's working on the Russian hydrogen bomb, but before that, he worked on the Russian atomic bomb in World War II. And
he was also in prison for a long time.
He worked for this guy named Kurchatov. And he keeps thinking, wow, this Kurchatov guy, he's such a genius. Every week he comes up with all this new stuff. And what he was getting all this stuff from spies at Los Alamos.
The breach.
I mean, they had the entire U.S. Manhattan Project working for them. And the Russians, of course, were our allies in World War II, so we were looking for Nazi spies. It turns out it was the commie spies that we should have been looking for. But anyway, so
yeah, the streets are filled with them now.
They were stealing everything that was and copying everything. They had their spies, you know, using little spy cameras, taking pictures of all this stuff. And so they're funneling it to Moscow to the Kurchatov guy. And so Kurchatov, he won't tell anybody where he's getting the money. He's getting all this information. So everybody assumed that he was just absolutely a genius.
Right.
That he was smarter than 200 people, because we had 200 scientists up at Los Alamos inventing the atomic bomb,
right?
Solving all these problems. And so anyway, Sir Kurchatov, and if anybody asked Kurchatov, you know, where were you getting this stuff? He'd just say, well, I'm just a really smart guy.
Hey, Dr. J, on that note,
that's what I was going to get to do, you know, and, you know, well, you got to have a sense of humor about this and recognize the absurdity of it. And so
I think this is a great time to go to a break, Dr. J, and we'll pick it back up.
All right, let's go to a break.
Exactly. If you can, please mute your phone until we come back. And
oh, sure.
Okay. All right. No. Yeah, we heard you sneezing earlier. God bless you, by the way. And you are blessed. We respect you.
God bless you.
All right. So stay tuned. All right, everybody. We're gonna go to a break real quick, and then we shall be back. Because some heads are gonna roll this night.
I'll be back.
Don't run. We are your friends.
Imagine.
The Martian revelation that is upon you all again now. And we are with our fantastic honored guest, Dr. John Brandenburg, laying some whoop-de-doos upon us all on the reality of what things that are. And then, there's a lot of questions coming in, Dr. Brandenburg, and I got to say, but before we get into that, again, back to those faces, and I have questions, maybe you helped kind of explain this to me, off the record with me on the phone, and I asked you if maybe you could help explain it again, because it makes the most sense. Like when I asked you, why put it in a video, not air it in the United States, have so much drama behind it, and just over I don't know, just for this to be seen of something that was not meant to be seen. I mean, those are the bizarre aspects to this. I think you, sir, could appreciate and could maybe break down for us of why and maybe how, why that occurred and its purpose with the Twilight Zone aspects. What's the purpose with all that?
Well, remember, it's Dick Hoagland, and he's a performer. He's an entertainer as well as a kind of investigator, and so I think that he probably, he wanted that Twilight Zone aspect to it. I do not understand.
Well, maybe to stay safe.
Apparently, the government gave him some of the unreleased pictures from the Viking, and so he was showing them off. And Dick Hoagland, he's a really smart guy. He made the face on Mars as as familiar to everyone as the face of George Washington on a dollar bill.
Dr. J, you were right. The face of Mars isn't only alone. It's not even lonely.
It ain't even lonely. Yeah. So it's so you got. I think he was just being a showman, and
well, he wasn't connecting to it. He wasn't acknowledging it.
They'd let him in on some of the new stuff they had, and so he was basically showing it off. And then, of course, they didn't want it getting out that they had pictures that were unreleased. I mean, when I heard that 3 months ago, I was quite shocked.
Oh, fill us in. What was that? Please remind me again.
No.
Oh, okay. So now you're saying they will release everything of these images. I mean,
I think they'll. Well, I mean, they're just going to show what we have now with the Odyssey and the LRO, and I mean, the face and the pyramid look like what they look like. That's, they're slightly
right, but regards to this other data, like these faces most likely were from, was from the extended missions that they haven't released. You think since this is being talked about?
I don't know if they're going to show that stuff. Right. They already showed the two faces at Galaxis Chaos, so they showed two extra faces. And
I found a couple too.
Yeah, they may kind of slowly release it, but there's not really much point. They're more concerned now with just,
I want to see it. We all want to see it, don't you, listeners?
Sure. Well, their main effort is to slowly but surely basically confirm what I've found. And what the other people also what they found.
Has Dana Rohrabacher spoke with you, which made him come on the air that time, asking about the ancient civilization on Mars being thousands of years old?
Well,
and he was smiling. He wanted us to know that.
I told you the backstory on that. I had to go in for heart surgery because I had rheumatic fever when I was a kid. Damaged my heart, and then I got pneumonia because I was living in Wisconsin, and I got pneumonia because it was a bad winter. So I ended up in the hospital, and then I wake up in the recovery room. I had heart surgery, so they fixed up everything. Everything's fine. Actually, I'm doing great, but I'm sitting there, and I hurt, and I'm still on stuff, all these drugs that they put me under the. So I just turn on the news. I think it was CNN.
Well, hopefully I'm not making your heart race too much, sir. I don't mean that.
No. I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
I love you. You know that, guy.
The thing was that I turn on the news after getting out of this operating thing, and there's Dana Rohrabacher asking NASA scientists, is there a dead civilization on Mars you haven't told us about?
I bet you started cracking up.
Oh, well, I did. I thought, wow, he read my book. And so then the doctor, my surgeon comes in to check on me after surgery, and I'm talking to him about this dead civilization on Mars. I said, look, it's being confirmed now. And he thought I was loopy because of the
sedatives, right? The drugs.
The sedatives and painkillers they had me on. So I finally, you know what I did? I gave him a copy of my book. But when I checked out of the hospital, I came back for a follow-up exam about a week later, and I gave him an autographed copy of my book. I said, look, it's just Murphy's Law that, I woke up, turned on the news, and there's Dana Rohrabacher talking about this stuff. I didn't go crazy because of the general anesthesia and stuff. So anyway, he seemed kind of relieved. Because when you go under general anesthesia, especially for like heart surgery or something, it takes about a week to get over that, and you're loopy. You're a little loopy for a couple days.
Yes. Have you ever contacted Dana after that?
I thought I was a little loopy, but then a friend of mine told me that he had to. His wife went through the same thing, and then she just kind of stayed loopy for like a week after they let her go from the hospital. She came home and said, "Oh, it's so nice of all these people to be here at the house to give me a coming home party." And there wasn't anybody there, but the guy just kind of played along with it, and just because it made her happy. Right. So anyway, so that was funny, but slowly but surely, everyone's figuring this all out.
So then these images should be able to come to us at some point. All right. So on that note,
eventually.
Well, on the last
eventually
show,
they'll publish a whole book of the stuff that they didn't disclose.
Well, the last show you were on with me, and the listeners could appreciate, you stated that you made a prediction that in 3 years, you wouldn't be surprised if and when Donald Trump comes on and say, hey, there's ancient, extinct civilization discovered on Mars.
Yeah, eventually he's going to do that.
That's incredible. So he's obviously in on it, and the reason he's
probably going to talk about it at the same time he talks about the Space Force and sending Americans to Mars, and he'll just throw that in as part of it, and basically as justification.
Right.
Why do we need to do what we're doing?
Right. Why do we need to put our American boots on the face of Mars?
Yeah, I mean, why not just, some people would say, well, let's just leave well enough alone. No,
we can't.
We're going to go up to Mars and colonize it and make it into our own place. That's the way it's going to be.
And do you think that's a good thing, Dr. J? I mean, seriously.
I do think it's a good thing. We're going to expand the human presence in the cosmos, and that's a good thing. I believe that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to live a future like Star Trek.
Do you think that you should be among the people that go there as well and build these?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna.
It's not far-fetched if it could really happen, Dr. J.
No. Here, I'll tell you. I believe
that might help your heart too.
Sometime in the next 15 or 20 years, I will actually go to Mars. Because getting to Mars is going to be a lot easier in the future than it is now.
That makes sense.
And I'm working on the the anti-gravity technology and stuff like that. I believe that'll be successful, and we'll be able to you'll be able to go to Mars in a week.
Wow.
Instead of 10 months, it'll just take a week. It'll be like a Caribbean cruise.
That is awesome, and that's what's needed. We start to get questions. You mind if I start getting the questions? I want to maybe open the phone line. For no beasts this night, not now. That's later. All right. This is for Dr. John Brandenburg. Show some respect. Anyway, all right. So, what does the doctor think of the real reason for NASA and other agencies to send a satellite to view the sun? And what do you think they are looking for?
Oh, well,
obviously the questions will vary.
The sun, the sun is really important. So, if you understand the sun better and understand its cycles, it helps understand the weather on Earth, and so that makes a lot of sense. And it doesn't cost very much to send a probe to the sun, and you just watch the activity on the sun, and you can predict like how bad the hurricane season is going to be if you can understand how much energy the sun's putting out.
And strategic reasonings for our satellites, and obviously the building blocks for the Space Force.
Well,
now, would we be able to protect ourselves, Dr. J, with that electromagnet, that technology you say that will be a reality in less than 20 years?
Yes.
Will that protect us from these radiations and maybe allow us to near the sun?
The Earth is protected by its magnetic field and its Van Allen belts and everything. The Van Allen belts are a place where a lot of the radiation from the sun and cosmic rays stop in the Earth's magnetic field, and they just circulate in that Van Allen belt. So, it's not dangerous at all until you go flying through it. So I believe that they'll be able to modify spacecraft to put up our own Van Allen belts around them to protect them. And also, by the way, monitoring the sun, Gary,
yes,
sir, makes human flight to Mars much more safe. Because if you're watching the sun all the time, every once in a while the sun will have what's called a flare.
Right.
And you can actually see them coming if you watch the sun carefully. With telescopes, you can actually see the magnetic lines of force getting twisted around themselves, and finally they break. They get twisted so much that they break, and then it releases all this radiation. And you don't want to be an astronaut, in outer space when that happens. It's bad news. So having this new satellite is probably in support of the human Mars mission later down the road, because it's giving us warning of radiation from solar flares.
That makes sense.
And also,
plus, we could use it for solar sails.
In the future, what will happen is they'll see the sun's getting ready to have a big flare, and they'll turn on the big electromagnetic shield around the spacecraft.
Yeah, but they could also be used for solar sails, right? Those things could be used for solar sails to push them out, right? Am I as a form of propulsion?
You can use solar sails, but
I was just thinking of
the best way to get to Mars is just a big rocket.
I agree. The big effing rocket.
Anti-gravity or something.
Yeah,
solar sails, or if you're sending cargo and you don't care how long it takes to get to Mars, sure you can send it with solar sails, but that's it's cheap.
Right.
But if you want to go to Mars in a week, then you have a big rocket engine or anti-gravity or something, and you don't mess with solar sails for that, because That's precious cargo. And the
You're
longer
not
you
going to
spend
mess
in
with the
space-
USA with that.
What?
You're not going to mess with the USA with that.
Right.
I'm not
the
dumb.
USA,
You once told me I'm very
one of the reasons we're
geopolitical.
going to Mars is because it'll keep our space technology, which is, you know, one of the foundations of having a strong national defense now, is to have really good space technology.
And a nation
we
great
wanted to
permanently.
be way ahead of the Russians and the Chinese.
Right, indeed. And there's a very good question here now. I believe we're bringing in somebody in a minute, but we have a supposed time frame for a Mars mission. How long do you think it will be before the military nuclear episode on Mars is accepted, proven, obviously before
I presented it at a lot of conferences now.
So it's already proven. That's why he's here speaking.
No, it's not proven.
Huh?
But, like they just launched a probe from Brandenburg.
Right.
They launched
the
a probe from
inside.
Brandenburg, was from
The
a
inside.
military base. It's
Correct.
a lot more expensive to launch stuff from Vandenberg because of the way the orbit is situated, and so you got to use a bigger rocket, costs more money. But the nice thing about Vandenberg, if you're in the government, if you want to send a classified payload to Mars to look for something classified, then you send it
Subsurface
to
illegals.
Vandenberg. Right. Well, what happens is, you know, enter to Mars, and I know just what they're looking for. They're looking for an isotope called plutonium-244, and you can look it up on Wikipedia.
And tell us what that is,
it's
sir.
only made in supernova or hydrogen bombs.
Thus one of the images on the facesofmars.com for the guest information and images. Check that out. I think that's where he's going now.
So if you find a lot of plutonium-244 in the soil,
right?
This lander, by the way, is going to dig down into the soil a couple feet. So
Yes.
if they pick up a lot of plutonium-244 in the soil, and it doesn't need to be more than just a trace. They got such sensitive stuff now. Then that'll prove that that Mars was nuked. It'll prove it.
Well, now, when will the mainstream and the Shostaks all agree to those conclusions like you are? And again, we commend you and respect you, but you see the problem here that we're still facing today. Again, we need petitions, where I was told science isn't done by petitions, Gary.
I know. Well, I told Seth Shoshak, I was at a meeting with him, and I told him, I said, Seth, there's a dead civilization on Mars, and somebody nuked it. And that's the truth, even if you're the last person on Earth to believe it.
Yeah, and the thing is, he
said, I probably will be the last person on Earth to believe it. And that's okay. He was, we were both joking about it a little bit.
Yeah, but we know what the deal is, and, I don't know, man.
By the way, he wants to find a civilization 100 light years from here by radio.
Well, there are bursts that I want to get a quote from him on, by the way, of AI finding them and already received data. Dr. J. But now look, civilization, dead or alive on Mars, to me, and this is my opinion, I'm not the scientist, I'm sure you respect, but...
No,
sir,
Gary, I respect it. You're a broadcaster, Gary.
Well, more than that. I'm the Mars revealer, and that's not a joke.
You're the Mars revealer. I'm just I'm just a rocket scientist.
Well, yeah, hey, man, you're revealing it here. You're revealing it, and we respect that.
Sure.
Now, but here's the question. Doesn't that fall in the realms of SETI? And Seth doesn't want to even touch base on that. Not even hypothetically, God.
He's in charge of the SETI Institute.
Yes, but the overall protocol doesn't what we're seeing on Mars fall into SETI.
Here's the joke.
His is radio telescopes. SETI is many.
Here's the joke.
Uh-huh.
To look for signs of intelligent life in the universe is, that's an affair of science. That's everybody thinks that's great. But to find it, to find it.
And right next door.
That's an affair of state. You know, that's government business.
Understood. That's why I said
like Elon Musk, he knows all about Mars, you know, and he wanted to go straight for Mars. And Uncle Sammy took him aside and said, Elon,
you work for us now.
You don't go to Mars till we say you go to Mars.
Wow.
And that's why they don't. You need a signed permission slip to go to Mars, and I'm going to be the one who signs it. So don't try and go to Mars without getting a permission slip first.
And that's why they won't fund that big effing rocket. Now a Japanese man about the entrepreneurship possibilities that can bring in the Martian revelation. On that note, we're going to go to.
Yeah, they're going to. That's going to be a great thing. Why? You know, see, my problem, my worry for Elon Musk is he's trying to do too much stuff all at once. He's trying to.
Well, he has the balls. He's got balls. You got to give him that, Dr. J. He's got balls.
Oh yeah. We
should support
I'll
him.
Give him that. But you know. And go to Mars.
There's no reason. That's okay. He's a visionary, just like you, sir.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You know,
anyway,
I respect both of you highly. You know, it would be great to even have you two talk together. But on that note, we're going to go to a break. We shall be back in like, I don't know, 7-8 minutes. I got to go to the boys' room, and I got to, you know, do some smoke in there. Pack the bowls, smoke them, because you're going to need them as we come back on a Martian Revelation. What an excellent show. Got someone coming on.
I'll be waiting.
All right, thank you, sir. Need to return to serenity.